I will not have to say too much. First of all, thank you very much that you joined this webinar in the morning in Austria, in the afternoon in Malaysia. Carbon neutrality is the latest global buzzword, not only in Austria, but also in Malaysia. Here the Malaysian government has committed to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. A little bit longer than in Austria, but nevertheless, it is a tough target to be succeeded, especially for a country so much in oil and gas. The Malaysian government has put in place ambitious plans to reduce its carbon emissions and find green solutions for the future. So this webinar should cover this information to give an overview about the current market situation and the legal frameworks in place, for sure, in order to fulfill the net zero targets. Yes, it's not only the market situation. We also want to highlight a little bit the different sectors which need especially the decarbonization. And well, for sure, we will also then highlight what could be then the potential collaborations from Austrian companies in order to support Malaysia in their endeavor to decarbonize. Before we really go into depth with the information together with our speakers, I just would like to let you know that we are recording this webinar. We will then also send you after the event, not immediately after the webinar, maybe some days later, the link to the recording as well as the presentations of our two speakers. So nothing will be lost. You do not have to write down everything or make screenshots. We will share this with you in short. And at the same time, this could be then also something which you could share with colleagues, with friends who are also active in this with this topic and were not able to join our webinar. Yes, if you have questions, please keep them in mind. We will have a Q&A session at the end. You have at the MS Teams also the Q&A box, which you could use, the chat box, where you can put in your questions, and we will ask them then once we are in this phase. Yeah, if there are any questions we do not succeed to answer in time, well, it will not be lost. We will share these with our panelists and we will send this to you. Yes, and my great honor to introduce our first speaker, Puan Soraya Nazra Binti Ramli. She is the Deputy Director of the Industry Planning and Development Unit of the Energy Commission Malaysia.
Hi and very good afternoon from Malaysia. I'm Soraya, Deputy Director of Industry Planning and Development in Energy Commission. Yes. So I will first talk about regulatory frameworks in Malaysia. Energy Commission, or we call Suruhanjaya Tenaga, is a statutory body which responsible regulates the energy sector, specifically for electricity and pipe gas supply industries, which is only for Peninsular Malaysia and Labuan. We also have another regulatory bodies for Sabah and also Sarawak. For Energy Commission, we reporting to two ministers in Malaysia, which is Minister of Energy Transition and Water Transformation. This is for the matters relating to supply of electricity, while we reports to Prime Minister and Minister of Economy for the matters relating to the supply of gas through pipelines. Okay, next. Okay, one of our main functions of Energy Commission is to advise the minister and regulate in the matters of Electricity Supply Act and also Gas Supply Act. which related to economic, safety, and also technical regulation. So in the economic parts, we need to ensure that electricity and pipe gas industry are economically efficient for the benefit of the consumers. While in safety regulation, we have to protect the industry, consumers, and public from the dangers arising from activities from electricity and pipe gas activities. Activities. And in terms of technical regulation, we have to ensure the secure, reliable, efficient supply and also meet the optimum service quality to the consumers. The other function of Energy Commission is to implement and enforce the energy supply laws. We also promote industry development, R&D, and also new techniques or new technology. And we also encourage self-regulation. Next. A little bit overview of Malaysia's power sector. In terms of demand share, the demand is 78% comes from Peninsular Malaysia, 18% from Sarawak, and also the rest from Sabah. So in Peninsular Malaysia, we currently have a total of 33,800 megawatt of installed capacity as of December 2024, which consists 37% of it from gas. The next is 36% from coal, 15% from solar, and the rest from hydro, diesel, and also other RE. With the maximum demand in Peninsular Malaysia is 20,000 megawatt. For Sarawak, their total installed capacity is 6,500 megawatt. This is as that data as 2023, which their main installed capacity come from hydro, which is 53%, 28% from gas, and 16% from coal, and the rest come from solar, diesel, and also other RE. Their maximum demand currently is at 4,398 megawatt. While Sabah, their installed capacity is dominated by gas, which is 55%. The rest is come from 25% from diesel, and the rest of it come from solar and other RE. Their total installed capacity as of December 2023 is 2,612 megawatt, with the maximum demand of 1,000 megawatt. Next. So the total operational capacity of RE in Peninsular Malaysia currently is at almost 5,000 megawatt. So the big chunk of it is come from solar, of course. We know that Malaysia have much potential of solar, which is almost 4,000 megawatt from solar. So in solar, we have several programs such as FIT, NEM, Celco, and also large-scale solar, which have through bidding of several cycles. Other than that, the RE capacity is coming from biomass and waste to energy, biogas, and also mini hydro. Next. So this is just a snapshot of the GHG inventory for electricity sector. Of course, the total net emission is coming from energy sector, where 42% of the total GHG is coming from electricity and heat production. Okay, next. Okay, this is just to show you that the World Energy Trilemma Index in 2022 report. So Malaysia ranked 35th overall with a trilemma score of 69, and the balance grade of A, D, and C. I think we are comparable with Singapore, where they in 31 place. And I think we reasonably better than Thailand and Indonesia. Next. So in terms of energy trilemma, we have to balance these three pillars, of course, the energy security, the energy equity, and also environmental sustainability. So in terms of energy security, we have these indexes. We want to pursue of reliability of LOLE 1 day per year with the reserve margin of 20% by 2040, and the diversification of the HHI index is below 0.5. In terms of energy equity, we of course looking at cost effective in terms of optimal generation plan. For environmental sustainability, we have our target in terms of emission intensity, where in 2030, we target to have a 45% reduction by GDP target from 2005 level. And this year, we also target to achieve 31% of RE capacity in Malaysia and 26% of RE for Peninsula. Next. This is the snapshot of the National Transition Roadmap letter, where we can see that the nation energy sector undergo a major transformation, shifting from fossil based to the clean and RE, while at the same time addressing the energy trilemma. So this is towards to achieve net zero in 2050. So we can see that here that we in 2030 we reduce the import of coal, and government also have announced that no new coal power plant, so that in the future we will much dependent on natural gas. And then in terms of total investment required to for this transition, so the total required investment is around 1,200 to 1,300 billion ringgit Malaysia. So in terms of GHG emission reduction, we targeted to have it reduced to 32% in 2050. Okay, next. As I said just now, we are so much potential. We so much have potential in solar. So we do have several solar programs in Peninsula Malaysia, where we started with FIT, feed-in tariff program in 2011. This program is sold the generation from solar to the grid for a fixed period. This is based on quota, subject to FIT fund. So this FIT is not only for solar, but also for biogas, biomass, and small hydro. But for solar quota, it has ended in 2017. But for the rest of RE, it has not yet ended. So in 2015, government introduced NEDA, a new enhanced dispatch arrangement, which the SPP, the merchant plant can export to the grid and supply to the single buyer of their solar generation. In 2016, we started to launch the large-scale solar program via competitive bidding, which is PPA based, and we gone through several biddings so far, and the latest one is LSS 5 price, which is the total quota of 2,000 megawatt. The next year, we introduced the net energy metering scheme, where the consumer can export their excess from solar generation to the grid. And then we also introduce telco programs which consumer consume all the generation, cannot export to the grid. And in recent 2021, we introduced the green electricity tariff, which consumers can buy the green electricity from grid, and they will receive the RE certificates. So in 2022, we have this corporate green power program, CGPP, where the corporate customers can purchase the electricity virtually from SPP through the NEDA scheme. Okay, next. So I just want to highlight what is our programs and successful story in 2024. So far, in 2024, we have 22 biogas and biomass projects under FIT mechanism. And because the overwhelming of the NEM program, so the government decided to add another quota of 100 megawatt for NEM Rakyat and also 300 megawatt for NEM Nova, which they announced in January, and this quota is until December 2024. Another program is on LSS Petra program, which is a total quota of 2,000 megawatt. The next one is low carbon energy generation program is under NEDA, which is total quota of 400 megawatt. So this is to encourage the development of power generation project for non-solar sources. Okay. Government also embarking on the pilot project of battery energy storage system with a total capacity of 400 megawatt hour, which is expected to come in 2026. The sixth point is on green electricity tariff, which is we continue to offer the quota of the green electricity tariff with the premium of 10 cents per kilowatt hour for LV consumers. And for MV consumers, the rate is 20 cents per kilowatt hours, which is these subscribers is until December 2025. Government also introduced an incentive to actually to promote the installation of solar at their rooftop by having this initiative Solar Peralihan Tenaga for Rakyat, which is called Solar at Petra. We also introduced in this scheme, they have two schemes under this incentive, which is the Solaris and also program Solar Boleh. The Solaris is the scheme where a cash rebate has been given to the whoever installed the solar rooftop up to 4,000 ringgit Malaysia. And another achieved story is on Energy, which is cross-border electricity sales to our neighboring countries, where the first transmission of RE from Malaysia to Singapore of 50 megawatt. And then we also launching the MGATS, which is Malaysian Grid Attribute Trading System for REC certificates. And then to regulate the efficient of consumption and also conservation of energy in Malaysia, the Parliament has passed the Bill of Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act in June 2024, which is to promote the demand side of energy management. Another thing is on CRES, is a program called Corporate Renewable Energy Supply Scheme, which is launched in September, and the guideline has been issued in 20 September. And this program actually is to enhance the corporate access and green electricity supply, where this is an open grid access system, which where third party can sell or purchase electricity via the grid network. And the last one in 2024, government announced the additional quota of NEM Rakyat in September, which is closed in December 2024. Okay, next. Okay. On this year, we are focusing on the additional quota of LSS Petra program, which is 2,000 megawatt. And government also announced an e-rebate, which amount of total ringgit Malaysia of 70 millions for the purchase of energy efficient appliance. And then government also announced the program called Community Renewable Energy Aggregation Mechanism Program, or CREAM, for the residential areas. This program is mainly for company who want to lease the residential rooftop, so they can aggregate the power and sell to the nearest demand. And the next thing is we will also have a LSS 6 still in discussion. And we also have a new round of battery energy storage program, where this is a bidding for battery. And additional quota for NEM with a total of 450 megawatt, which opened until 30 June 2025. And the Solaris, the rebates to the person who installed solar at their rooftop is extended until 30 April 2025. Next. So this is the projected installed capacity mix from 2025 to 2050. As we can see in this graph that RE will dominate the installed capacity by 2050. So no new coal power plant in place. So natural gas will act as a lower carbon transition fuel. Next. So what we can observe from the energy landscape recently, so we can see that renewables dominated the installed capacity by 2050. So as I said just now, with the coal phase down and also no new coal power plant, it will significantly alter fuel mix landscape, and so that the natural gas will act as a lower carbon replacement fuel. So we also need energy storage and upgrading of our network to provide the operational flexibility and security for both supply and demands, and emerging highly variable demands such as EV and data centers may reshape the overall system of demand profile in Malaysia. The rapid rise of electromobility and DC to further test the supply side availability and reliability. But however, this is to drive innovation and especially in terms of system integration. So, but the growing end user participation in the energy landscape may complicate the rate design for investment recovery. So next. So I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Juan Soraya, thank you very much for your introduction to the energy sector in Malaysia, especially for the renewable energies. Really interesting which kind of setup Malaysia has already. Let's come to our next speaker. I'm very happy to announce Ms. Elina Yani. She is the CEO from the Malaysian Greentech and Climate Change Corporation Greentech Ideas Lab. The Malaysian Greentech and Climate Change Corporation is quite well known under the name MGTC, and we have been, how to say, tier one cooperation partners with MGTC already the last years, and I'm very happy to have MGTC on board here for this webinar. Well, MGTC is a government agency that drives the country's green economic growth by implementing initiatives and programs that help Malaysia's green development. Yeah. It is a kind of department to the Malaysian Ministry of Environment, and therefore very well linked in order to develop these initiatives and programs. So, dear Ms. Elina Yani, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for being with us.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Reinhardt, also for the kind introduction and inviting us to be one of the panel speakers for today's decarbonization webinar with Advantage Austria, and as well as the Austrian companies and also the participants in today's webinar. My name is Elina Yani. I'm the CEO of Greentech Ideas Lab and also part of the federal government agency, Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Corporation. It is a mouthful, but the short acronym is MGTC. So, okay, we go to the next slide. So just to cover a little bit from the perspective of environment and then also from climate change perspective, my colleague Puan Suraya from the Energy Commission just now really covered extensively on the focus of Malaysia in terms of the energy supply from the grid perspective, as well as the incentives and also the new programs that's being launched by the government. But from my side, because we are the government agency under Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, we will look at it from a perspective of climate change from Malaysia. So as you all are aware, the greenhouse gas sources come from many anthropogenic sources, but in Malaysia, primarily it comes from these five common areas. So definitely electricity generation is the first or the highest emitting sector in terms of greenhouse gas emissions in Malaysia, but followed closely by the transport and mobility sector, and then of course the agriculture, livestock and poultry, and then last but not least, of course, deforestation. So if we can go to the next slide. Just wanted to share that in Malaysia, as part of the second biennial update report that Malaysia submits to the United Nations Framework on Climate Change Convention, energy sector is reported as the main contributor to the GHG emissions overall from Malaysia. As you can see, there's also other sectors, for example, like IPPU, which stands for industrial production and product use, the waste sector, agriculture sector, land use, and of course land use conservation forests, as well as coming with the overall total net emissions from Malaysia as a nation. Globally, for Malaysia's contribution to the planet's emission numbers is only 0.69%. But however, even though we are a small country and emitting 0.69% to the global number, Malaysia wants to contribute in terms of our reporting and also our voluntary efforts to reduce the GHG emissions from our country. If you can look at the numbers on the right side of the slide here, the energy sector contributes 79.4% to the total GHG emissions for the country. But on the other hand, the energy sector also contributes 28% to the nation's GDP, as well as employing 25% of the total workforce. So this is where it contributes a lot to the GDP growth of Malaysia, but at the same time also providing jobs for the Malaysians. But at the same time, it is not decoupling the GHG emissions. So this is where what are the efforts that we can do that we can actually decouple the greenhouse gas emissions from the country's uprising GDP growth year on year. Okay, so we go to the next slide. So looking at this, of course, coming from the government, there's a lot of sectors that it's covered, because I'm covering on sectoral coverage and also technologies that we're looking at in terms of Malaysia's decarbonization effort. The main coverage of the energy sector and also the other sectors that are highest emitting is covered in terms of the action plan within these policies and strategic documents. Number one, we have the National Energy Transition Roadmap. This is under our Ministry of Economy in Malaysia, and it has 6 levers that can actually guide, for example, foreign companies, for example, Austrian companies, into how you can enter the Malaysian market, for example. We also have a roadmap that covers on hydrogen economy and technology roadmap. This roadmap belongs under the Ministry of Science in Malaysia. We also have the ESG, industry ESG framework that is under our Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. And then last but not least, how does all this contribute to the carbon market? So this carbon market handbook was co-developed between MGTC as well as Bursa Malaysia. Bursa is the quasi-government agency that actually looks at the Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange. So this document guides the public listed companies in Malaysia, and then as to how they can also be part of the carbon market. So if we go to the next slide. So under the National Energy Transition Roadmap, I mentioned about the 6 levers that are under our NETA, the National Energy Transition Roadmap. Key areas or sectors that is under the energy, when you break down into the subsectors, these are the areas that are going through the transition process. So number one, the first lever that we're looking at is definitely on the demand side of energy. Before you go into any other technologies, in terms of decarbonization, is always to look at efficiency in demand for energy. So these are the targets that we have by 2050 in terms of going for net zero as a country, looking at the contribution of energy efficiency savings from both industry and commercial, but of course looking from the residential household as well in terms of contribution. The second level is looking at renewable energy. This is looking to, and as mentioned by Puan Suraya earlier, to zero-rise the coal share of the installed capacity in our energy grid, but at the same time looking at the renewable energy share in the installed capacity mix of 70% by 2050. So this is the focus sector, and where are the decarbonization technologies that could come to support this level under our National Energy Transition Roadmap. The third level is looking at hydrogen, looking at the metric ton per annum green hydrogen production up to 2.5 metric ton per annum at a minimum by 2050, and then looking at grey hydrogen feedstock phase that's looking at about 100%, and then looking at establishment of hydrogen hubs all over Malaysia, at least 3 hubs to be established all over Malaysia. So for hydrogen companies that have solutions in hydrogen production, this is probably a level that you want to look and focus on. The fourth level that we're looking at is definitely looking at bioenergy. So contributions coming from biofuel capacity, billion liters of 3.5 by 2050, and then looking at bioenergy power generation of at least 1.4 gigawatt by 2050. And then the fifth level is looking at green mobility and transport, looking at promoting the modality share for urban public transport, looking at X number of EVs in the fleets as well as on the road, and then looking at, of course, looking at the heavy transport in terms of logistics and supply chain, biofuel blending, SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, and of course in maritime transport as well. Last but not least, the last level that we're looking at is definitely looking at CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage. This is looking at establishment of a number of CCUS clusters all over Malaysia, and looking at carbon storage capacity metric ton per annum of about 40 to 80 by 2050. So this is a guiding document in terms of where the country is headed to, and then also how industry players, be it Malaysian companies, but of course international companies coming from Austria, can contribute in terms of solutions, technologies, and also perhaps partnerships with the project promoters that are going to do these initiatives. Okay, so we go to the next slide. So under MGTC itself, we are guided by the National Green Technology Policy under our ministry, and of course the climate change policy. What do you call it? The follow-on document from this policy documents is the Green Technology Master Plan. So if we go to the next slide, the Green Technology Master Plan actually looks and deep dives into the 6 highest emitting sectors in Malaysia. As I mentioned and also elaborate earlier, even with Puan Suraya elaborating earlier, a lot of the focus is definitely on the energy sector being the highest emitting sector in Malaysia for greenhouse gases. But of course, we're looking at other emitting sectors as well. So for example, manufacturing sector, the transport sector as mentioned earlier, the building sector, the waste sector, as well as the water sector. So under the 6 highest emitting sectors, under the subsector, the 16 subsectors that actually may be able to have action plans on how to actually responsibly transition towards net zero. So for example, in terms of building, looking at a lot more technologies to promote green buildings establishment and building in Malaysia. And then of course looking at the waste sector, looking at a more responsible waste treatment and disposal, and how do you recover resources from the waste sector, and ultimately promoting circular economy. From the water sector, looking from the upstream, midstream, all the way to downstream, looking at river basin management, looking at the midstream, how is the water treatment and distribution technologies that can be contributed, rainwater harvesting technologies, and of course downstream looking at wastewater treatment technologies. And then of course from the manufacturing sector, looking at manufacturing of eco products and looking at industrial efficiency. So the arrow that goes around the 6 sectors, this is the role of MGTC. So we create the promotion and awareness, be it from within domestic, but also looking at promoting international corporations. We create a lot of market enablers. So for example, Energy Commission is a statutory body that looks at the Electricity Supply Act. For MGTC, we are a facilitating government agency. So the government green incentives are parked under MGTC, where we provide the market enablers. We have the green technology financing scheme to raise local finance to run green projects or initiatives in Malaysia. We provide tax exemptions and tax allowances, but at the same time, we also look at establishing green standards and recognition to allow recognition of technologies that are certified to be utilized by off-takers and also consumers. These are but a few of the things that we do under the market enabler focus. We do a lot of training to promote human capital development, but at the same time promoting universities to spin off the technologies of low carbon into the for the off-takers and also industry consumption. And then last but not least, we also advise the government in terms of new legislations or acts that may perhaps look into addendum into sustainability. So we go to the next slide. So the next slide focuses on what other sectors that we are going into from now to 2030, and then more aggressively beyond 2030. Construction and manufacturing sector, we've actually published a revisit, a new best practice guidelines that we have published on the public domain as of December 2022. So this best practices actually looks at, recognizing what are the companies that have done best practices in this particular sectors that can be emulated by the other industry players. And then we've also published guidance documents for the mining sector, forest operations, livestock sector, fisheries, agriculture and plantation sector, and then last but not least, services sector. So from the 6 sectors that I mentioned earlier, the main earlier focus, now we have started to go into another 6 new sectors to actually drive the net zero transition and expedite and accelerate the efforts towards net zero. Okay, so we go to the next slide. So what are the initiatives that we have done from the government that actually assisting the execution of the policies that I mentioned just now? So if we go to the next slide, we are monitoring the numbers and achievement, because we are the ministry and also agency that does the reporting to the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework on Climate Change Convention. So for country reporting, we have a target, a pledge that the Malaysian government has pledged to United United Nations under the Paris Agreement. The pledge is to actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions intensity reduction by 45% in 2030. So as of the last 2 years reporting, believe it or not, we're still tabulating the 34 numbers, but the 2023 numbers show that we are at about 35.9% as from our biennial update report number 4 that we have tabled to United Nations in 2023. So we're about 10% left to reach the pledge of 2030. But at the same time, from there, we also calculate and also monitor the numbers that contribute to the country pledge. What are the numbers in terms of green investments, jobs creation, the number of green products and services that are registered and recognized in Malaysia, and of course, looking at promoting the procurement of these green products and technologies and services by the government and the public sector. And then, of course, looking at establishment of low carbon zones in the municipalities in Malaysia. We have about 154 municipalities in Malaysia. Coincidentally, this afternoon we have a Low Carbon Cities Award ceremony that I'm attending, but I'm just here to grace this webinar to do this presentation. So these are but a few of the numbers that we monitor and track. And then last but not least, looking at the number of public electric vehicle charging stations in Malaysia. Okay, so we go to the next slide. So in terms of the achievement, as I mentioned just now, we are creating all these market enablers to actually help not only Malaysian companies, but also international companies. So one of the initiatives that the government has announced in our annual budget is the Green Technology Financing Scheme. So under this GTFS, the government is pushing on both sides. So from the project applications, so for example, you want to raise local finance to run a project with a potential off-taker in Malaysia, for example, for your technology, you can actually apply the GTFS, and loan applications or debt financing that you apply under the 56 panel banks under Bank Negara in Malaysia is actually the National Bank in Malaysia. So under the 56 panel banks, you can actually get a 1.5% rebate for your loan application. This is actually provided by the government of Malaysia. The second part, to actually accelerate or also encourage the banks themselves to issue out approvals for loans, financing and all that, is that we provide a 60 to 80% government guarantee to the panel banks, which we park the guarantee under the Credit Guarantee Corporation of Malaysia, CGC. And then this is where it provides the government guarantee to also the panel banks to assure them, to also provide them confidence and assurance from the government that they should finance more of the sustainable linked projects. So this initiative is being executed by MGTC as the government agency, but it is supported by our ministry, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, our Ministry of Finance, MOF, the CGC, as I mentioned just now, and the Central Bank of Malaysia. So this has been the financing that has been certified and disbursed from 2010, and then now we are continuing onwards in 2025. Okay, so we go to the next slide. So under the tax exemption and tax allowances, we have this scheme we call the GITA and the GITE. So it stands for a long acronym that stands for Green Investment Tax Allowance and Green Income Tax Exemption. So under the Green Income Tax Exemption, any company, whether you are a foreign entity or even a local Malaysian company or your local Malaysian partner, can obtain the 5 years tax exemption if you qualify under our service provision under our My Hijau directory. I will explain about this My Hijau directory in my next slide. So this is to promote the service providers to actually be able to encourage them with this income tax exemption. From the consumer side, so for example, you have off-takers or consumers from Malaysia, your buyers can actually apply the Green Investment Tax Allowance. So for example, if your assets or your technology is registered under our My Hijau directory, your potential buyers from Malaysia, they can actually buy the technology and then apply it under the asset category. But if they are doing a bigger project, so for example, maybe they're doing a waste management project or they're doing like a solar project, for example, That's actually they're generating revenue for it, or they are self-consuming the solar, for example, for their own consumption. That one can be applied under the projects category. So this is something that you can entice more off-takers and more buyers for your technologies in Malaysia if you can get your technology registered under our My Hijau. So this is a collaboration with the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, MIDA. In Austria, there's also a MIDA office, if I'm not mistaken, but need to check with Jennifer after this. But this is also where you can also ask a lot of more questions on this for clarification. The LHDN is our Inland Revenue Board, which actually looks at all the corporate tax in Malaysia. So what is this My Hijau directory? So if we can go to the next slide. The My Hijau directory is actually, My is short for Malaysia, and Hijau is actually a Malay word for green. So it's Malaysian Green Recognition Scheme. So the technology is coming from Austria, for example. We recognize European certification bodies, so for example, like TUV, and then also BSI, and then also a lot of the international certification bodies. You need to get your technology certified by any of these international certification bodies that we recognize. Once you have that certificate, you can get the My Hijau mark registration within 7 to 22 working days. So this is an area where we want to try to make it easy to be recognized, and also at the same time having a lot more certification bodies that can be partnering with Malaysia. So this is where once it is registered, either it's a service provider or you have a technology that can be registered under the asset category. This is where you can be able to sell your products or your technologies in Malaysia, and then your buyers can actually apply for the investment tax allowance. Okay, so we are firm believers of the sustainable goal number 12, which is promoting sustainable consumption and production. And then this is where we give the incentives to the producers and service providers, but also to the buyers who consume. Okay, so we go to the next slide. So, looking at this, the biggest procuring group in Malaysia is actually, of course, the government ministries, the public sector. And I think this reflects on many countries of the world. So this is where we want the government to make the first move in buying all these green technologies and service provisions and all that. So we've started the government green procurement in Malaysia since 2013. So this was reflected in the 11th Malaysia Plan back in 2016. And then now we have carried it into our 12th Malaysia Plan. And then this year, we are going into our 13th Malaysia Plan already. So this is where the target, I can't reveal what's the target yet for the 13th Malaysia Plan. But under the 12th Malaysia Plan, the target for every government ministry in Malaysia is that they should spend at least 25% of their annual procurement budget on buying green technologies and also solutions and service provision. So we prepare a guideline document. Sorry, the document title is in Malay, but the brown document on the left side of the slide here is actually the guiding document for the government green procurement program. So procurement managers are actually guided by this document on how they should look into procuring green products and technologies. So if we go to the next slide, typically for the government ministries, they would buy technologies that are related to buildings because they are housed in government buildings and administrative buildings. So hence a lot of the equipment that you see on the left side, bottom left side here, it focuses a lot on the technologies that are related to buildings lah. So for example, like ICT equipment, cleaning services for the government toilets and all that. But from 2013, the government of Malaysia has procured close to 6.5 billion ringgit in buying green technologies and also green services. So we've expanded this program to the state governments. We have 14 states in Malaysia and also the municipalities. As I mentioned just now, we have 154 municipalities. So we've started to extend this project down towards the state governments as well. Okay, we go to the next slide. So when we talk about the cities, the municipalities, currently right now, we've launched the program called the Low Carbon Cities 2030 Challenge. As you might be aware, 70% of the global population will be living in cities by the year 2030. So it is the responsibility of cities and municipalities to actually start to implement low carbon initiatives in their cities as well. So this is where they can adopt the 5 elements under our low carbon cities framework. They can look into the reduction of energy consumption. They can look at renewable energy in the cities. They can look at resources, for example, like water, having rainwater harvesting, for example, increasing the use of public transport, establishing cycling lanes in Malaysia and walking trails. As you might be aware, Malaysia is a tropical country. Typically, people don't walk so much and also cycle so much because it's quite hot here. But this is where the cities can play a part in terms of establishing this designated areas to support the citizens to start to take up active mobility. And then, of course, looking at the amount of waste that can be reduced that goes to the landfill in Malaysia, and also increasing the number of trees, doing tree planting initiatives in the cities. So they can pick any of the elements that they can do as part of their reporting for the challenge under the low carbon cities. So far, out of the 154 municipalities in Malaysia, we've had over 70 local authorities that have joined our program. As you can see from the map, it's coming from all over Malaysia. Okay, so we go to the next slide. So under the reporting, as I mentioned just now, MGTC, we've also established an operating system. We call it the Low Carbon Operating System, LCOS for short. So this LCOS is actually a cloud-based, but it's a carbon or greenhouse gas reporting platform. So we are making it digital to support digitalization and of course AI and all that. So it's aligned to globally recognized standards and it's of course having PDPA and GDPR. So data protection is very important for us. So if you go to the next slide, under this LCOS, what stakeholders can do in Malaysia, and this also extends to Austrian companies that have footprint in Malaysia, they can actually start to establish a baseline reporting for your Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions reporting. So from this reporting that they have done, they can start to manage it. They can do target setting exercises according to SBTI methodologies, and then they can look into what are the mitigation or abatement initiatives that they can do. And then last but not least, they can actually use the reporting on the LCOS to actually report it to their stakeholders, you know, so public listed companies, they can share it to their institutional investors, they can share it to the banks that provide them the loan, they can share it to their auditors, they can share it to their board members, and so on and so forth. So far, the public sector in Malaysia that has been reporting to MGTC, we've migrated them onto this platform. But at the same time, we're also encouraging the private sector to come and join us on this reporting platform as well. So far, we've had over 100 private sector that is reporting. We have also international banks like OCBC and also other organizations that actually use the platform, this government platform, to actually track their sustainability linked financing. So they ask their customers, their clients to actually report on the platform as well, and they use it as their tracking of their loans and all that. Okay, so we go to the next slide. So we also promote a lot on energy efficiency. So this is where under the ASEAN Center of Energy, we are MGTC, we are doing this energy management program that we actually do energy management audit all over the country and actually encourage people to establish, to start with establishment of energy management committee and then looking at ways that they can be energy efficient. So this is the dashboard that we've established and we've also shared to a lot of the stakeholders when they are joining the program. Okay, so we go to the next slide. What we like to encourage, and I don't know whether it's an Asian culture or something like that, but people like to be rewarded. So for the efforts that they have done, people like to be rewarded, and we also want to create a sense of competition among stakeholders. So what we do is that we have this National Energy Awards. It is actually under the same ministry where Puan Suraya is at, which is the Ministry of Energy Transition and Water Transformation. National Energy Awards recognize the best practices in the country in terms of energy management, energy efficiency, and of course, renewable energy. So Malaysian winners, we've had even international companies that win this award because they have the footprint of their project in Malaysia. The Malaysian winners automatically represent Malaysia in the ASEAN Energy Awards. So what we do is that we want people to start the initiatives. We want people to do the initiatives to mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions. But at the same time, once people do good, we also reward them in terms of the award ceremonies that we have. So we go to the next slide. We would also want to look into the context of low carbon technologies in Malaysia. Particularly, these are the winners from our National Energy Awards. A lot of them are in building related technologies. So, for example, energy management, but also some also looking at renewable energy technologies. For example, RE combined heat and power, for example. So they've done it in a lot of the large buildings in Malaysia, either industrial and commercial, but also government as well. Okay, so we go to the next slide. I think this is my last slide, but just wanted to invite all the stakeholders here. We have an annual exhibition that we do every October. October is Environmental Month in Malaysia. So our exhibition is called iGEM, International Greentech and Eco Products Malaysia. It's our race towards net zero pledge. It's a platform where we encourage the exhibitors to showcase all the solutions and technologies that you have, and then we actually bring the delegations of the procurement managers to do this business matching and promoting sustainable consumption and production. So our iGEM this year is on the 15th to the 17th of October 2025 in the Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre. So if you go to the next slide, I think this is my last slide, right, Jennifer? Yeah, so that's my last slide, and I thank everyone for listening, and do reach out to us and also engage us for any further inquiries. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elena Gianni. And yes, indeed, we are planning on that already to have again an Austrian pavilion at iGEM, and for sure all the Austrian companies are highly invited to join us there. I would like to hand over now to my colleague Jennifer Tang in order to let you know about the challenges and especially opportunities for Austrian companies in Malaysia in this field. Thank you.
Thank you. I will make this short as we are running slightly over time. But just to give a quick overview of the challenges in Malaysia. So one of the biggest challenges we face is a slightly fragmented landscape. So obviously the goal of achieving net zero and decarbonization in general requires collaboration from all parties, not just private public partnerships, but also across different sectors. However, each sector is governed by different agencies, and they all also have their own specific challenges in decarbonization. So sometimes the priorities might not align, especially at a policy level. But also in terms of execution, because the needs for, so also even within the transportation industry, for example, which is one of the highest contributors across different sectors, there would also be then different solutions needed for aviation versus land transport and maritime. And the inequities in each sector means that there's division in funding and also the focus. So some industries will pull ahead while others are left behind, or in a worst case, everything gets slowed down due to limited resources. So that leads to one of the other big challenges, which is in financing. Obviously, as most of you are aware, the transition to more sustainable models, whether renewable energy or modernization of manufacturing plants, they all require significant investment, especially into infrastructure changes. So while a lot of large companies have begun the process in line with their ESG commitments, Malaysia does mostly consist of SMEs. So a lot of companies are either reluctant or financially unable to pivot their business models. And I know that Elena shared many incentives from the government, but not all companies are aware of this. So I think that is also one of the issues that Malaysian companies face for decarbonization. And of course, there's also the economic impact on consumers, because when the companies have to begin their sustainability transition, if they're forced by policy, for example, a lot of the costs will end up being passed to consumers, and that leads to marginalization of lower income groups. And in terms of adoption, there's also a long history of fossil fuel dependency in Malaysia, which then also leads to slower adoption of renewable energies. We are working very hard, as mentioned by Puan Suraya and Elena, that the government is looking at transitioning from fossil fuel based towards renewable based, but there is a significant investment. So aside from the cost, there's also the factor of the time it takes to build up the new infrastructure, and also, very importantly, it's the talent needed, because the businesses then have to take time and invest in either training their staff or hiring staff who are familiar with the new technologies. And we'll finish by just quickly highlighting the impact of the EUDR, but more importantly, CBAM, which is the cross-border adjustment mechanism. It relates to carbon emissions and trading. So it will have a significant impact, especially with the agricultural sectors for palm oil and rubber. But other significant industries in Malaysia like cement, metal, fertilizer, and electricity will also be greatly impacted. It's estimated about as much as 75% of Malaysia's exports to the European Union will be impacted by CBAM. And the main challenges would be in acquiring certifications and also in calculating the carbon footprints. So a lot of companies find it very complicated to understand the regulations, or they also don't have sufficient resources to dedicate to compliance. So very quickly, to all the Austrian companies today, if you have suitable solutions for any of these challenges, or also, I think Elena did a great job highlighting the more specific technologies in various sectors. This would be a good time to enter the Malaysian market. As you have heard, the government is very proactive in driving the nation's net zero targets. And with all of the policies coming into play, I think there will be a greater need and demand from Malaysian companies for proven solutions and also new partnerships and collaborations. Okay, well, in the meantime, we're waiting for questions. We would just like to highlight some of our future events and reports. So for the Austrian companies, we will have an environment report coming out this March, which covers all the different sectors in the environment, within environment, and also covers decarbonization. And we are also planning to participate in iGEM this year with an Austrian pavilion. We have done so for the past 3 years. It's been a very successful partnership. So we will have a booth. We are all welcome to join, write into us, or some of you might have also received the invitation already. If not, please just feel free to contact us and we will reply to any questions.
Yes, we still do not get any questions, so obviously there is nothing open to be discussed. So I would like to say thank you to everybody to join us here at this webinar. Sorry for our technical glitches at the beginning, but at least I think we did very well to give our speakers the possibility to share their knowledge. Therefore, I would like to say once again, thank you very much to Puan Suraya Nasra Binti Ramli from the Energy Commission, as well as Ms. Elina Jani from MGTC to share their information with us. Please, if you have any questions after this webinar, let us know. As I mentioned before, we will share the presentation as well as the recording of this webinar with you shortly. Be a little bit patient as we have to do the technical things in order to fulfill also all standards. Yes, I see no questions coming up. Thanks a lot for your participation, and looking forward to seeing you latest at iGEM or in Austria at the Export Day or the Wirtschaftsdelegierten-Sprechtage, which comes up in May and June. So then, thank you very much. And goodbye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
From Kuala Lumpur. Bye-bye.